And so Ginni Callahan's been making a living as a kayak coach and guide for over 25 years. Someday, she says, she'll grow up and get a real job. But meanwhile, this adventure has taken her to Polynesia, New Zealand, Australia, Chile, the UK, Canada, all of the fringes of the US, and most faithfully to Mexico. She founded Columbia River Kayaking out of Skamakawa and Slow Boat Farm in Cathlamet, Washington, which is home of LOCO, the Lower Columbia Kayak Roundup, until 2011, after which she sailed across the Pacific Ocean. Why not? She helped to introduce kayak sailing to North America from its Australian resurgence. If this were a resume, it would include her credentials as ACA Level 5 Advanced Open Water Coastal Kayak Instructor and British Canoeing 5-star Advanced Sea Kayak Leader. With British Canoeing, now known as Paddle Sports UK, she's also a trainer and assessor of sea kayak leaders and a sea kayak coach tutor. She founded and still runs Sea Kayak Baja Mexico, which utilizes ecotourism in a world-class destination to leverage conservatism and community programs. She has been a news member for most of her paddling career and is offering a special OOPS trip in Baja this fall. Ginni has requested that we save questions until the end. You can also put questions in the chat, which we will read when we have a chance. So here's Ginni with tales of adventure and community enrichment, the magic of Baja. Ginni Callahan, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here, and especially Patty and Jim for helping put this together, and Susan Danini for your ideas. So thank you all OOPS folks for being here, for your interest, and for your support over the years. And thank you, Patty and Jim, for putting this together. Susan Danini for the great idea. Thank you, Christy, for being here. Christy's our registration specialist and summer manager and assistant manager the rest of the year. She's going to say some words at the end just to greet. So if you're registering for a trip, Christy, that's the folk, the face that you're going to be interacting with. So I've got a slideshow here. Let me see. Oh, you know what? I need to share my screen. 25 years of wildlife. Let's have some fun tonight. There is a sea so rich in life that you can see the plankton swirling in the currents from space. Nutrient-rich waters meet bountiful sunlight and make the foundation of a food web, which supports tremendous variety and volume of life, both in the water and beyond. Hey, who let these suspicious characters in? See those blue feet? This blue-footed booby is endemic, not just to the Galapagos, but also to the Sea of Cortez. The rich waters of the Gulf even support kayakers. So the Gulf of California, or Sea of Cortez, is tucked inside the Baja California Peninsula in sort of a yin-yang of desert and sea. Baja California is longer than Florida or Italy. It's an 800-mile peninsula on the western side of Mexico. The word Baja means lower. Alta California is now in the US. About 2/3 of the way down the Baja Peninsula on the Gulf side is a cluster of 5 islands adjacent to the sleepy town of Loreto. Current population, about 16,000, 1 traffic light that usually works, and an international airport. After at least 10,000 years of habitation by bands of tenacious and resourceful people living semi-nomadically on this desert peninsula, Loreto became the site of the first mission in 1697 and the original capital of all of California. So I have to confess, I have an affliction. When I paddle in amazing places, I find myself scheming how to invite people to join me. So some of these trips are fleeting, like New Zealand, we did that twice, Polynesia just once, but Baja has been capturing my heart and imagination for over 25 years. Maybe it's the romance of islands. The islands call to you too. Islands are those magical places that change our perspective. Not just literally looking back at the mainland, but scientifically too. Islands are home to a disproportionate share of the world's rare and odd plants and animals. In this case, meaning the Montserrat Chuckwalla, not Hano the guide. After becoming intimate with Loretto's inner islands of Coronado, Isla del Carmen, Danzante, through several years of guiding, I started to hear the call of the further islands, Montserrat and Catalina or Catalana. The locals call it Isla Catalana. The old maps call it Santa Catalina. So first I explored Montserrat Island. By myself a few times. I went to explore above and below the water just to be thorough about it. And then, true to my affliction, I invited others, groups of guides, geologists, eventually some commercial trips. And at some point, Catalana called. So I picked up the call. I loaded my kayak with 11 days of food and water to last in case I got winded in out there, and headed out to a half uncharted island. Enthusiastically, I might add. Unlike nearby islands, Catalana was never connected to the mainland. It also has a different geologic composition. And don't take it for granted. Well, I mean, actually you could. This is Granite Island. Never having been connected to the mainland means that the plants and animals that live there were not stranded when it broke off, but everything had to arrive by one means or another. Have you ever seen a cardone cactus swim? One of the species Catalana is famous for is its giant barrel cactus. This endemic grows on 5 islands, but the largest individuals occur on Catalana. They're over double the size of their nearest relatives. Another inhabitant is the Isla Santa Catalina side-blotched lizard, Uta squamata. But the most famous endemic is the rattleless rattlesnake. So when hiking in snake country, it's always a good idea to wear your sturdiest boots. And that question always comes up. How do you call it a rattlesnake if it has no rattle? Well, Crotalus catalinensis is a rattlesnake for structural reasons, as well as for relational reasons. The rattles, which are made of finger-like material, fingernail-like material, keratin, that grows at the tip of the snake's tail each time it molts, but each new rattle just simply falls off. What most people don't know about this little critter is that it's tiny. It's about 1/3 the size of its relatives on nearby islands. See it down there? So dwarfism and gigantism are common on islands where nature plays with the parameters of life in surprising ways. Things get big, things get little. Reptiles struggle with their identities. Islands are like art classrooms, bubbles of creativity with a temporary mode of safety before something changes. Islands reveal that the way we usually see things is not the only way they can be. Of course, after exploring it, I couldn't resist offering a commercial trip, the 5 Islands Challenge in 2017. Here we are ecstatically arriving after a rather lumpy 14 nautical mile crossing. It was the only commercial kayak camping trip in history to go to that island. Under current management plan, the island is now off limits to even landing without a research permit. Which is probably just as well. The crossing back on my initial solo exploration was one of the hardest I've ever done, starting pre-dawn to avoid the 15-knot west wind in my face that found me anyway and buried the bow in every wave. The silver lining, or green lining, was the bioluminescence that highlighted every feature on the deck of my kayak every few seconds and lit up all the white caps around me as far as I could see. This was terrifyingly magical. So that bioluminescence, being the base of the food web, has something to do with another reason I'm still in love with Baja. It's wildlife. And I want to point out that the background to these title slides isn't just a blue background. It's a photo taken looking down into the water. And you can see the kind of sunlight rays fading off into the depths. Mexico is one of the world's 17 mega diverse countries. In less than 2% of the world's land, it holds 10 to 12% of the world's species. The reptile biodiversity in Mexico ranks #1 in the world with 707 species. On the Gulf Islands alone, 515 species of reptiles live. Almost half of them are endemic, some to only one island. The Gulf is one of the most biologically rich regions on Earth with extraordinary diversity and productivity of all marine taxa, from the tiny, who think they're big. How would you like to be a giant barnacle larva about an inch big, floating around? Oh, did you know, going back to this larva, so barnacles are related to shrimp. And when they're mature, they'll find a rock, attach themselves by the fluffy stuff at the top, build the cone, and use the filtering bits, which are kind of their feet, to pull in food. So kind of the similar body structure to a shrimp. Okay, so from the tiny to the truly big. And blue whales hang out around Loreto from about January to early March. It's one of the few places on the planet where blue whales come close enough to shore consistently enough to reliably go see one on a motorboat or research one. So for perspective, that little nibble on the blue whale's fluke is the bite of an orca. The 6,000 recorded animal species in the Gulf is estimated to represent only about 70% of the actual animal diversity lurking in its rich waters. Like this Marisla's chromodorid, a kind of a sea slug that wears its gills on its head. Another really cool marine mammal is the Mexican fishing bat. It's classified as marine because it gets all of its moisture and nutrients from the sea. It's the only marine mammal that flies. You see the foot in the back, they have these two giant hind feet that rake the sea surface as they fly, and they catch little fish, juvenile lobster, and just for the salad to round out their diets, some algae. The islands of Loreto are uniquely positioned to enjoy this natural bounty. In the 1990s, the fishermen of Loreto were dismayed at watching large trawlers from elsewhere scraping the seafloor and dumping tons of unwanted bycatch that washed up on the shores of the town in smelly berms of rotting fish. The local fishermen and residents banded together to petition the federal government for a tool for managing these waters for long-term sustainability. After 4 years of petitioning, Parque Nacional Bahía de Loreto became the first national protected area in all Mexico to be protected as a result of an initiative from local residents. Other areas have followed its example. The park includes 5 islands, 10 islets, and 510,000 acres of marine surface and islands. The region is one of the world's conservation frontiers and a research hotspot. Fernando Arcas was a fisherman and instrumental in the effort to form the park. In recent decades, he's dedicated himself to research, particularly blue whales. Also to getting local school kids out on the sea to experience the whales and help identify them. So the difference of the fins and the pigmentation of the skin are a couple ways you can identify individual whales. Fernando invited the kids to name the whales, and for some reason they started naming the whales after vegetables. So we've got lechuga, apio, chicharo, which is lettuce, celery, green pea. And the most famous one is calabaza. She's got a big white patch on the bottom of her fluke. Her name is Squash. In 2006, UNESCO included all the islands and waters of the Gulf on its World Heritage List. That description states, the property is of striking natural beauty and provides a dramatic setting due to the rugged forms of the islands with high cliffs and sandy beaches, contrasting with the brilliant reflection from the desert and the surrounding turquoise waters. The Sea of Cortez is home to 695 vascular plant species, more than in any marine and insular or island property on the World Heritage List. That's not bad for a desert. This is a lomboy which is reputed to hold cures for cancer as well as being used on wounds to stop bleeding. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this character, the osprey, and you probably know that osprey migrate away from the Pacific Northwest in the winter. And Baja, the osprey stay all the time. I was seeing them nest in both places and I'm scratching my head like, what are you building 2 nests? Turns out the osprey of the Pacific Northwest migrate to Mexico, but they migrate to mainland Mexico. Whereas the Baja osprey, no, they got a good thing. They don't leave. So the UNESCO description continues, the diversity of forms and colors is complemented by a wealth of birds and marine life. Okay, so here's some of my favorite critters. This is a chocolate chip star, which I think this one should actually be a caramel chip star. And this guy is a tiny little red-legged hermit crab peeking out from under that shell with its googly looking eyes. This one is a 6-legged sea star. Most of them have 5 legs, but 6-legged, and it's less than a centimeter long, clinging to a sea fan. As the sea fan moves back and forth in the current, the little sea star reaches out and filters plankton. So it's not eating the coral. The sea fan is a soft coral, but it's just getting a ride. It's a pretty cool little critter. The scorpion fish is not a character that you would want to step on. There's marine toxin in the spines, and they're so convinced in their camouflage that they'll let you step on them, which seems silly. But yeah, there's pretty impressive face there. And it's one of the 891 fish species in the Sea of Cortez. 90 of those are endemic, including this Cortez angel at the bottom left. The site, still meaning the Sea of Cortez, contains 39% of the world's total number of species of marine mammals, and 1/3 of the world's marine cetacean species, so whales and dolphins. And in this humpback whale's mouth, you can see sardines hanging in the baleen. So it's easy to fall in love with a place that's amazing. Let's touch a little bit on my story, how it connects with the Sea Kayak Baja Mexico story. I did not come down here to start a company or even to be a kayak guide. It was the invitation of a friend that set this fate in motion. He needed a ride, I had a truck, and I got the chance to tag along on some kayak trips, which incidentally is also how I got into sea kayaking from a background in canoeing and surfing. I guided for another company for about 10 years, mostly in double kayaks on no experience necessary trips. That's what all the companies were doing at the time. Some 7 years in, I started to get pressure from students of my summer kayaking courses in the Pacific Northwest to run expeditions for them in Baja, not the typical float and bloat trips everyone else was doing, but something different. So Sea Kayak Baja Mexico started with a dream to provide paddling enthusiasts the best equipment, enriching experiences in a world-class location. And starting a company in a foreign country where it's not possible to know all the hoops you're going to have to jump through because they're in the process of being developed, in a language you barely understand, in a bit of a macho culture, could definitely be considered wildlife. But I don't know anything that would have been so satisfying. The dream took flight November 2007 with the first SKBM trip. Many of those same folks have come back year after year, bringing friends. In December 2009, we opened a downtown storefront, offering rentals, day trips, and a little bit of retail. The location has changed and we've grown over the years, but still with the same commitment to quality. Training has always been part of our mission, making an international standard accessible in a remote outpost of paddle sports. It's been a slow road, but that mission has matured to include developing coaches who will teach future generations in a long-term vision of local sustainability. December 2018, we moved to a waterfront location. Imagine that, a sea kayak company. So this gave us an even better platform for building community around paddle sports in Loreto. The very next month, we hosted the first all guides gathering, which included a presentation by the National Park Director and a discussion of protocols. And of course, a play day. Getting guides of Loretto together helps build relationships between companies and guides individuals that supports cooperation, professionalism, safety, and a better experience for all out on the islands. In summer of 2019, the club really took off, partly because the local access to the water. In a local culture where many don't know how to swim, water safety and outdoor education go a long way to inspiring care for the sea. Of course, there were play days. The next year, we did the guides gathering again, and by special request, had a sailing class. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, yeah, COVID happened to the whole world. It wasn't just us. And as we know, it's not always the adventure we planned on. The waterfront location was the first thing we let go. That same month, Captain Henrik, my adventure buddy of 10 years, told me he wanted a divorce. It was a tough double whammy, shaking the two pillars of my identity and running off with what I had thought of as security. But the sun sets on one adventure and prepares us for the dawn of another. By the end of April 2020, quarantine had come to Loretto. I decided it was time to do something I had long dreamed of. Two things, really. One, I'd fantasized about meandering about the Sea of Cortez for an unhurried time with a desalinator, fish hooks, and no fixed itinerary. Thankfully, an engineer friend of mine who's an avid Baja paddler had previously modified a desalinator for me so it could be pumped with the feet while paddling. Now was the time to put that lifesaver to good use. Second, there were two distant islands which had been sliding along the horizon every time I paddled to La Paz. And I wanted to go visit them. They were Isla San Diego and Isla Santa Cruz. When I started out on that trip, I felt like a wounded animal crawling off to a place of safety where the sea rinsed my soul. I pumped seawater, desalinated it to drink, and cried it back salty again. I curled up in caves out of the beastly sun. And that trip, it gave me a chance to act out my internal struggles on a physical canvas. I carried cameras and my computer for processing the photos and for writing. That and a month's worth of food and a desalinator make for a heavy kayak. Thankfully, I had my trusty traveling companion, Moose, to help get the kayak to the water. From Loretto, this was the route of the trip. I crossed to Carmen Island, then down the coast. Early on, I injured my left wrist trying to pull the overloaded kayak through slow water. 6 miles became too far to limp in a day with my paddle under my elbow. So I rigged a sling that would let me hold the paddle normally, but let my elbow take the force of the pull. You can see it here with the line looped around the paddle. It worked a dream. The next day I covered 24 nautical miles. That was the last day of my 51st year, and it marked a turning point. The next day, I crossed out to Isla San Jose. Moose and I shared our birthdays, my 52nd and his 31st, with a fine-scaled triggerfish who made great ceviche. And then I dawdled my way north, visiting those islands along the way. I passed hours watching nature. Now, this isn't just any gull. This is a yellow-footed gull. Yellow-footed gulls are endemic to the Sea of Cortez and the Salton Sea, which is a historic extension of the Sea of Cortez. And they're an indicator species for the health of the region. There aren't that many other gulls and no other gulls that look like this in the area. I learned a couple tunes on my flute, including the Ode to the Gull, Gull New World. I'm no pro, but I enjoy playing out there, especially when the gulls are an appreciative audience. So here's a little video. That video is on our YouTube channel. So I constantly questioned whether what I was doing had enough of a larger purpose. But there was something therapeutic in just watching the world, the animals, the sea, sky, the movement of shadows through the day. And it was actually on this beach, Isla San Diego, one of those two little islands, where I wrote in my journal how I wished I could be contributing to science or something with this wandering. Earlier in that day, I'd noticed some marine fossils wedged between the rounded rocks of this cliff. I shared those photos with a geologist a few months after my trip, and he sent me back to measure the rocks and document the fossils. This circled research site number 3 there. So with his brains and my ability to get data from remote places, we published this study with the catchy title of Upper Pleistocene and Holocene Storm Deposits Eroded from the Granodiorite Coast on Isla San Diego, Baja California Sur, Mexico. It calculates storm energy and climate, roughly between 10,000 and 100,000 years ago. There are other sites near Loreto where he's been studying the same theme. After hurricanes, we gather data and compare geologic effects of modern storm power. So, wish come true. There are other geologic mysteries on the remote islands, like this on a pocket beach on the north side of Isla Santa Cruz, which looks like fossilized sand dollars, but it's in granite, which crystallizes from magma far below the Earth's surface, so not a place for fossils. There's only one sandy beach on Isla Santa Cruz. And quite a few other little pocket beaches if it's calm enough to get in there. And of course, you knew this was coming. I would love to indulge my affliction for inviting people to to paddle in cool places and include these islands on an extended Loreto to La Paz trip, as rugged as they are. Let me know if you're down for a challenge on a remote trip like this. Keep in mind, though, that long crossings and challenging landings are part of the deal and part of the reward. So on that northward dawdle between islands, I became comfortable with being a long way from land. And I started to eat more. This was the food I had left after 3 weeks. I had eaten way too much fish early on and didn't reduce the stash very much. So you'll notice that there's still a few fresh items. This cabbage lasted almost 4 weeks, peeling one leaf at a time. Yeah. But on the last day of my solo, I crossed paths with a sailor who will factor into the next story. All in all, that solo trip helped me reconnect with my love for being out there and my desire to share it. But after a month, I still wasn't ready to go back, and the world wasn't ready for a new normal yet either. Another guide came out to paddle with me for a few more days and almost literally had to drag me back to Loreto. So I hatched a plan to keep myself and the team engaged while we waited for the world. The plan would give me a schedule and incentive to get out into nature and stay fit. It would get the team on the water, and it would give us all a goal. The sailor I'd met on the solo trip would be sailing from the other side of the Gulf back to Loreto in October. His boat was up here in San Carlos. And if that's not an invitation to paddle across the Gulf, I don't know what is. As a team, we would paddle up from Loreto to Santa Rosalia. The others would get a ride back, and I would go across. Simple. We had from June to October to get in shape. We spent days on deserted beaches, fishing and eating well. We started to make instructional paddling videos, but never completed them. We explored remote reefs, sometimes towing the kayaks while we snorkeled. In the process of slowing down and looking, we saw creatures we'd never seen before, like this stone triggerfish. Every time I see one, I want to get out my pencil and try to do the maze. These are the biggest triggerfish in the world. They're bigger than Titan triggers, and they get up to 1 meter long. Weekly, I added 5 nautical miles to my previous week's nonstop paddle, working from 15 nautical miles to 45 over the course of a few months, and adding a warm-up day the day prior, mostly as an excuse to camp out. The final big workout before the crossing was a 50 nautical mile loop of Isla del Carmen in 16 hours. It was August with a heat index of 114 degrees in the middle of the day. I suffered a little, but achieved. So most paddlers cross the Gulf further north. Actually, most paddlers don't cross the Gulf at all, but among the paddlers who do, the favored route is between Bahia de Los Angeles and Padre Quino, or Bahia Quino, where the islands offer stepping stones and the crossings are no more than 20 nautical miles each. But that's not where my ride was. My ride was here. In 1933, adventurers Dana and Ginger Lamb made 3 attempts to cross the Gulf. They had departed San Diego in the Great Depression in a 16-foot homemade semi-decked sailing canoe and made it around the Baja Peninsula into the Gulf. Their first crossing attempt narrowly avoided, quote, mountains of water propelled by an 80-mile gale, unquote. The second retreat came after sailing their skin-on-frame canoe into a submerged log some 20 miles out to sea and ripping a 2-inch hole in the skin, which they hastily patched with tortillas. Their third try succeeded on the same route that I was planning. 5 of us launched from Loretto, headed up the coast, fishing, chatting, exploring sea caves, and playing along the way, until a big wind loomed in the forecast. We decided to turn tail and sail back to Loretto. Then Jorge and Ruben and I got a ride up to Santa Rosalia. We would explore these 2 nearby islands together, and then they would get a ride back to Loretto, and I would go across. So Isla San Marcos, the first one was 9 nautical miles out from the coast. And Isla Tortugas, the next one was 15 nautical miles from there. This is Tortugas from a plane with a volcano crater. And there's no guaranteed landing. Dana and Ginger Lamb and their sailing canoe anchored offshore before crossing. Another group of kayakers I knew turned back from Tortugas after being unable to land. A fisherman we knew said they used to stash a freezer on the south side for their catch, so we headed there. We found a lovely sandy beach. The sand grains were a foot or more across, but you can't be picky in times like this. The broken lid to an old freezer became our kitchen table and a bed for one of us, and then we parted ways. A crossing is that mystical space between here and there, when all there is water. Crossings are metaphors for transitions, for departures, for new beginnings. Crossings are both a dominance and a submission, giving yourself to the journey. From Tortugas, I launched at midnight and planned to arrive to the other side before dark. The other island in the route was San Pedro Nolasco, a popular dive location rimmed by cliffs and sea caves. There would be no landing. During COVID, I chose a new music for my life, new vibrations, a new soundtrack. There was one song that really pulled me forward that whole summer. It's called Make It. Here's a video put to that song. It includes the training, the coastal trip with my team, the immersion in nature, and the solo unsupported crossing. The drone shots were added afterwards.
Mom, I'm gonna make it. Mom, I'm gonna make it. Oh, Mom, I'm gonna make it. Let's forget this land of words. Spend an evening by the sea. I was up before the sunset, and the waves they set me free. They don't stop now. If you were gonna make it. Kick your feet up on the dash. Might as well enjoy your ride. If you were gonna make it. Stop now. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. Feel the fire. Stop now. I can feel we're gonna make it. I'm 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 gonna make it. I wanna go. Not gonna sleep till you're taking me home. Don't wanna stop. I wanna go. Not gonna sleep till you're taking me home. And I say, oh, I'm gonna make it. 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 I'm gonna make it.
Yeah. To my knowledge, that was the first kayak crossing, sea kayak crossing on that route, and I was the first woman to cross solo on any route. So the commercial trip to cross the Gulf is scheduled for, just kidding. We're not going to lead a trip across the Sea of Cortez. Nor am I looking for another big goal. That one served its purpose, pulling me forward through a tough time, and I'm really glad to have done it. Here's what we are planning. We're just about to head into a full calendar of amazing trips in Baja. You can find those on our website. A special OOPS trip, November 5 to 10 in the Loreto Islands. It's about level 3 and there are 4 seats left. You can email us to register for that. We are planning to continue and develop our community programs. More on that in just a moment. And we are building a training and expedition center to house, to make a secure and permanent location for our community and commercial activities, SKBM Tech. And they actually just broke ground on it this week. Yes. Community programs, here's the need. Many kids in Loreto today, even from fishing families, don't know how to swim. They absorb their non-swimming parents' fear of the water. Most have never been to an island. Those islands we're taking tourists to every day. You tell folks they shouldn't dump trash in the arroyo that leads to the sea because it harms wildlife and ultimately themselves. But if they've never seen a dolphin and don't understand how we're all connected, there's not much motivation. The sea is that other place, maybe to be wary of. And empty land is just empty land, so who cares about it? Trash is just one issue, but indicative of a deeper attitude and easy to put in a picture. Today's kids are tomorrow's decision makers and influencers. They are at a formative time in their lives. So teach them basic water safety, put a mask on their faces, and let them see the life underwater. Teach them to paddle around under their own power. And take them to an island where they can explore and watch sea lions doing underwater ballet and taking naps. Show them how plants, animals, sea, air, land, and we are all interconnected. And then you've struck a spark. Then it starts to matter. There's also something about being able to paddle their own board or boat around that gives them a sense of agency. I have control over where I go. What I do makes a difference. Okay, inspirational interlude from Mahatma Gandhi. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. So conservation isn't just science and legislation. To succeed, conservation has to start at the household level, at the personal level. Here's what we're doing about it, and some thoughts behind it. We believe in recreation, education, and access. Recreation, because we protect what we love. Education, we love what we know. And access, you can't know it if you can't get there. So with that foundation, our mission is inviting young people to fall in love with nature through recreation and education, and ensuring there are places where locals and visitors alike can go to nurture that romance and pass it on. Recreation. This is our summer course, Curso de Verano. It's a week-long program for primary school students and secondary school students. It was funded this year by 41 sponsors, mostly from the US and Canada, who heard about it on our newsletter and Facebook page. 2024 was our second year running this program. It's a program that unites aspects of several organizations and government agencies. It's run by our guides, coaches, and admin with support from 2 nature squad assistants each week, whom we train prior to the event. The kids learn how to fit and wear a life jacket. They learn to paddle through instruction and lots of games. Practice teamwork. The kids learn about the marine park and animals in the sea. They have a look for themselves. And in the estuary as well, they apply what they've learned about birds and engage in some discovery of their own. The grand finale of the week is a trip to Coronado's Island. They explore the island, paddle, snorkel, and picnic on the beach. And it's not just the kids who had a good time. Andrea and Michelle, our assistants from Eco Alianza's Nature Squad program, gained experience managing and educating groups of kids in the water and on the beach. One of the weeks this year, they saw a pod of dolphins on their island trip. For about half the kids, it was the first time they'd ever seen a dolphin. Just magical. Okay. Beyond inspiring a love for nature, some practical skills might come in handy, like the summer course. Kayak and maintenance and repair course this summer was free to participants. We hope to offer it as an annual commercial program in the future with sponsor-funded scholarships available. Success story, Carolina participated in kayak maintenance and several other programs. Her sponsors, Jan and Joan, have been supporting her for several years and were actually the inspiration for Curso de Verano. She's headed to a foreign university when she graduates high school with their support and with a load of practical skills and a lot more self-confidence to pursue whatever she wants to. Sea Kayak Baja Mexico's Club Nómadas de Loreto is free to local community members. After starting they start with a water safety class, then folks can go on outings to gain skills, train athletically, be social. You know, you're a club. We even go camping. The club has been the launching point for all of our community programs. I've been training leaders in Baja for decades. A few years ago, I started training the club's most enthusiastic participants as leaders in trade for their leading club outings for other people. This evolved into training them as coaches, an experience which helped me gain the British canoeing credentials to officially train coaches. So the club is a tool for learning at all levels. Local community residents learn water safety and connect with the sea. Leaders and coaches in training get to practice and do so in their home language. And I get to keep improving my coaching and mentoring skills. To keep the learning moving forward for all of us, we invite foreign coaches annually to work with our team. Dave Brown, JP Etalk have both come from the UK to upskill us. Jen Kleck, Victor Leon, and I run a Baja Guides Fest at La Bufadora in Ensenada in September each year to kick off the Baja season. And we run leadership assessments and coaching courses. It's open to all Baja guides. So the club is a tool that supports the whole vision, a community of people around common values, using it to gain life skills, share enthusiasm and knowledge, and support Loreto as a sustainable eco destination, and to cultivate the home we love on a local and a global scale. Access is the final of the 3 tenets. Recreation, education, get people engaged. But if we can't get to those wild places because they're blocked by resorts or oceanfront golf courses, it's hard to keep the enthusiasm alive and the curiosity stoked. Here's the access challenge. This is the Loreto coast. Red stars are traditional access blocked by recent development. Gold stars are coastal access, which is great for day paddles, but not practical for island crossing for the distance. And green is, yes, island access. While the development boom is good for some aspects of the local economy, it can further estrange local families and businesses from the sea. This last green star was planned for a future mega resort development. The land in question included the face of the mountains and the alluvial plain in the distance. These mountains, the Sierra La Giganta, rise over 3,000 feet high. This is the view from the marine park, providing a wilderness setting by day and magical skies at night. Protected by islands, this coast offers a sheltered place at the edge of the marine park, safe to camp when it's too rough to cross. It includes a variety of microenvironments in a relatively small space and hiking trails. The educational value is immense for paddle sports, as well as field study and education in many natural sciences. Due to the proximity of sea and desert, there are birds from both worlds. Those attuned to energy fields say that the mountains and the islands form a basin that holds a healing energy, and this beach has been sought as a healing place. And I confess to a special affection. I lived on this beach for 10 years, literally on the beach. Here began Sea Kayak Baja Mexico's training center. So when a government insider tipped me off that a pending shift in the Federal Tourism Agency was about to open an opportunity to preserve this area for conservation and ecotourism, I gave away a bunch of my guiding gigs that season and focused on presentations to government officials and getting petitions signed. And the really great news is that this area is now one of Mexico's newest national parks as of just over a year ago. So this is some of the positive impact that ecotourism can have. They're working on a management plan as we speak. Education and research have already begun. Conserva Loreto, a local project of the Ocean Foundation, organized a BioBlitz to get a baseline of plants and animals in the new park. So special thank you to Conserva Loreto for letting me use this great internet from their office for tonight's presentation. On the BioBlitz, botanists, students, foreigners, photographers, and even kayak guides participated in the BioBlitz. Yep, we documented species on inaturalist.org. iNat is a nonprofit social network built on the concept of mapping and sharing observations of biodiversity across the globe. A friendly competition combined with spirited cooperation as we build this baseline together. So the access issue persists. I've got an idea for the paddling access to Coronado and the coast north of Loreto, but that's for another show. I would like to point out that if you've paddled with Sea Kayak Baja Mexico, you've supported these community programs and conservation efforts. Thank you. We dedicate 2% of our gross revenue to giving back, which means it's a core part of who we are, not just waiting to see if we have extra profit to give. Plus, a lot of volunteer hours from our staff and club leaders have supported the cause. We also do accept donations, which allows more kids to benefit from the programs and allows us to do more good in the community. In the building of our training and expedition center, the kayak storage and the clubhouse are areas which still need funding. So if you're inspired, please contact us. It would help a lot. On behalf of our amazing team of guides and support staff, thank you for participating in this presentation on the first 25 years. We'll see you again for the presentation on the next 25 years. And meanwhile, we look forward to seeing you on the water and reporting the great things that you're enabling us to do. In a moment, I'd like to present Christy, and I'll put up some links here and in the chat if you're interested, and also take some questions. Let's see if I can stop sharing. You guys have a chance to have a peek at this links page for a moment.
Wow, Ginny, thank you. This is Jim with Oops, and here at the Lucky Lab in Portland. Just a stunning presentation. Thank you so much. Really exceptional. Maybe to do questions, we're going to have to no thanks. No thanks. Not just yet, Joseph. Thank you, though. Questions are going to, maybe we try to, can you let Kristen and Patty? So the microphone that you're hearing me is from my computer that is in front of me. The other microphone is not being used right now. How about we divvy up questions first with folks from the Lucky Lab?
Before we do questions, can I introduce Christy and Hano?
Yes,
From
please.
my team. Christy's been our summer manager. She's our registration specialist, and Hano is our winter manager. Christy, you want to say hi real quick?
Hi, everyone. Good night. Thank you so much for being here. Hopefully, we've inspired you to come visit us. Please don't hesitate to contact us at info@seakayakbaja.com. You'll get me to answer you. And yeah, hopefully we can see you soon. Thank you so much.
Right. Hano, you want to say hi?
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Hano. I'm glad you all are here. Ginny, thank you for the presentation. It's just stunning. And of course, we are waiting for you guys. I hope you guys are now inspired to come visit us. It's pretty much year-round paddling weather here, so come join us.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you for that. Let's see, just a second. Let me get all the participants on here so folks can see and turn off the host. Let's Oh, where? Right here? Thank you. Okay, good. All right, how about asking questions in two groups, one from the Lucky Lab folks here in Portland, and I'm gonna have to convey questions and then for maybe 5 or 6 minutes and then turn it over to folks asking online in the Zoom call. Ginny, is that okay?
That sounds great.
Okay, Lucky Lab questions?
Very quickly. Is there a time of year that the water is the calmest?
Is there a time of year that the water is calmest?
Yeah, during the beastly hot summer. So the general year goes now October, it's calm but pretty warm. And then it starts to transition into December, which is cold and windy. So October warm, nice, November spectacular, later November a little bit more wind, December, January, February can be a little bit windy. March is sort of transitional, April starts to clear up. So the wind generates the turnover of nutrients, which brings the whales. So the windier months will have more whales generally.
Thank you. Another question? Sure.
So I was curious as to which month she did her trip when she was island hopping from south to north. I heard that typically people would go from north to south because of the wind, so that I thought that was interesting.
Were you able to hear that?
A little bit. That month-long solo, I started from Loretto in May and went south for the first half and then north for the second half. And the wind wasn't so much a factor that I couldn't wait it out or tough it out. And May's usually pretty calm anyway. And then the crossing of the Gulf was October, another good, typically calm month, but hot.
Maybe I'll ask a question, Jenny. So a lot of inspirational points in your presentation, and a lot of it comes from you. So I'm sensing that a lot of folks get inspired by working with you, and you get to have some folks that want to be part of this.
I see Krista smiling.
Can you share just a little bit more about that? I mean, are folks knocking at the door all the time? Do you have to do some recruiting? How do you get folks to join in on this?
As far as guiding, we get applications from a lot of different places. We are committed to hiring Mexican nationals as guides and folks as local as possible. And we have, in our entire team, we have one other person who's not a Mexican national, and he came to us through a contract with another company that we had. So I'm proud of that, and I work with some really amazing national folks. Yeah, for certain jobs that are quite specific, that are harder to fill, like more administrative and financial, we have looked and we have gotten lucky with some amazing folks on the team. I'm really proud and thankful to be working with the people I'm working with, not just because they're on this call, but I really am.
Cool. So it sounds like the people are inspired by the group, by the mission, by the activities, by you, and by everybody all together. So it keeps it flowing with regard to other participants. So that's really great.
I've been really blessed, yes.
Yeah. Any others from the Lucky Lab room? Well, how about then we be quiet here, folks online. Any questions for Ginny? Yeah. Unmute yourself and or raise a hand or both and ask Ginny a question if you got one.
I'm looking also at the chats, and I don't see any notes in the chats. I'm trying to figure out how to put those links to everybody. I managed to put to Ocean Paddler, but I'm struggling on how to send a message that goes to everybody. I don't know if anybody has tips or can help me out with that.
You know, I saw you did a post on the listserv. If you'd be so kind as to send them through that, that would be a great way for all OOPS folks to get that information. Or if you want, you could send it to the programs, to Patty and me, and we could take care of that for you. Your choice.
Excellent. I'd love to do that. Thank you.
Question for Jenny from Lucky Lab folks. Go ahead. I'll come back.
There's a soon in October that the deadline was July. There's also a kind of a first come trip in April with Ginny. And when is the deadline for that?
Could you repeat it? And I might ask Christy's help on answering this one, if you know, Christy.
I think I'll try to paraphrase it. There's a couple of OOPS trips, one in October, but then one in April, I assume, of 2025. When's the deadline or the timeline for signing up for it? Is that right?
I would say March. March will be the deadline for you to sign up.
Okay.
And how about the trips that are being planned for specifically for groups? I think there was a.
Oh, yeah. I think what you're referring to is we're going to keep the trips exclusively OOPS members to a certain date.
Right.
And then if we didn't have it full, we would open it to other like-minded paddlers of similar skill level. And I can't actually remember which. It was a little bit more than a month in advance. Generally, a month out would be, that's when we're choosing, what to do if trips have low enrollment. But yeah, a month out would be a good, final limit. And if you want to fill it with OOPS folks, I think it was 3 months out, something like that.
So that would be about December or January.
Yeah.
So December, January for primary for OOPS folks for the April trip. Is that what I heard? Is that what we heard?
Yeah, Christy, help me remember to find that out, and I'll send that in the email.
Yes,
OOPS members.
looking at the invite, what that was sent out to you guys, I think. The April trip starting April 7th through April 12th, 2025. It's exclusive to you guys until November 7th, but we can talk about maybe extending that period of time. No problem.
We can just put another announcement, send another announcement out before then, so.
I don't know if you heard that, but we'll do some, okay, sounds like you did.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally.
Another question here from the Lucky Lab. I see there's a question in the chat. We'll come back to that in just a second. I think it was from Kim. Another question from the Lucky Lab. I don't know if you're able to hear that. And this is also look like in the chat. Maybe we can do a couple questions. Okay. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna repeat those questions, maybe in two parts. The first one was, can you give us an idea of the skill level required for the trips? Maybe just a broad brush at that.
We've got different levels of trips. There's the no experience necessary getaways. Then explore level trips are maybe your level 2 experience with wet exit, control of the kayak, having done a few trips. And then there's journeys, which are longer, will paddle in whitecaps. And they tend to be at least 6 days, more often 10 days for the journeys. And there's expeditions where we'll be paddling in whitecaps for sometimes or higher than our heads, surf landings, longer crossings, so maybe 9 or 10 mile crossings. And then there's invitational trips. If you paddled with us and we're doing something even more challenging, then we'll invite interested folks who seem to be good group players, team members, and really skilled paddlers on invitational trips.
What about the specific trips you were talking about?
Cool stuff. A brief follow-up on that. I think maybe this will get both of those. What about for the OOPS trips? What's maybe for the one, I guess the November one and the April one? What are the skill levels for those trips?
The November one, Christy, give me a thumbs up if I'm right. I think that's an explore trip. So that's about high level 2, low level 3. When the whitecaps generally start happening, then we plan to be off the water. And then the April trip, is that an explore also, or is that, okay, yeah, so similar trips. So we wanted to make them more accessible to more folks. And if the OOPS as a club is interested in more challenging trips, we're happy to put them together.
What kind of distances?
Okay, a follow-up on that. What kind of distances would be expected for both the November and the April trips?
So 6 nautical miles to 10 nautical miles in a day. And generally on an explore trip, there'll be at least one layover. So not moving camp that day.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. We're all good from the Lucky Lab. Again, let's open it up online with, there's a bunch of, at least 20 folks on the call. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. Any follow-up questions or anything you'd like.
It looks like we got Kim, answer to Kim's question, which was in the chat about the skill range. And we also do courses, like specifically focusing on learning. So learning in paradise, sea paddler, training, and some of those are camping context, but more focusing on skills learned in context of the trip. Okay, when we did the Baja Sea Kayak trip 20 years ago, we doubled kayaks provided by, who was BSKA? We have a few double kayaks by request, but we generally don't use double kayaks. Oh, Sea Kayak Adventures, maybe that was. That's who I used to work for. Yeah, and they use double kayaks. Thanks for that question, by the way. Come back paddling with us, you'll get to enjoy singles.
I think we've got a question from the Lucky Lab, or is it a chat question, Patty?
Yeah, I just had a question regarding your education program that's local for, it looked like they were sort of grade school students. Is that competitive to get into? Are you able to train all of the youngsters in Laredo that want to learn swimming and kayaking skills? If you could just tell me a little bit more about that, that would be great.
Great question. We able to hear that?
Yeah, let me take a little stab at it, and then Christy, if you want to add anything else. Christy was the admin here, in charge on the ground, making that happen. This year we had 2 weeks, 1 week for elementary school students and the other for, so like 10 to 12 and the other for 13 to 15-year-olds, limited to 12 students per week. And we work with one school, which is a relatively low income school. We've had other schools, 2 low income schools, thanks. We've had other schools approach us wanting the program, wanting programs for them. We've put some of them on the water just for a day. That's an area we'd love to expand. So resources, human resources, financial support behind that to make that happen. And in like the course of 2 or 3 more years, especially with our new base, that would be terrific to have all that in place so we can serve more folks. We've also started to offer some commercially those activities. We've had some local families like send their 2 kids out and sponsor another kid to join, like another local kid to join them, which I think is just a beautiful thing, like a beautiful thought. It was their thought. Beautiful idea. Chris, do you want to add anything else to that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so kids from the schools are chosen based on good grades and good conduct and interest. So they are very selected students who really appreciate and are happy to join us for that week. And yeah, it's a very beautiful project, which everyone enjoys. We, as admin guides, as coaches, we learn from them as well. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Maybe a couple more here from the Lucky Lab. Patty, have you got a question?
Hey, folks, this is Patty coming from Lucky Lab. I just want to let you know that Ginny has, she has agreed to, she doesn't want to take the honoraria that we often offer our speakers. And instead, the Oops program, the Oops Kayak Club is going to be donating her honoraria to the Sea Kayak Baja Mexico Legacy Program. So thank you, Ginny, for that.
Thank you for mentioning that, Patty. That's very thoughtful. Yeah, thank you. Let's see, there was another question from Janelle about the November trip, and I thought I saw a slide that said there were 4 open spaces for the Oops November trip. Is that correct?
Correct.
For that in April.
How about for the April?
I'm sorry, yeah, for the October.
4 on the, is it October or November? It's 4.
November.
Okay, is that good? Any final questions from folks, either at the Lucky Lab or online? We'll clap here and hopefully you can hear us all. Thank you so much, Jenny and Christine and Ano and everybody online. Thank you so much for joining us. Really fantastic. We'll go ahead and end the
Thank you
call
so
now.
much for the invitation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Many thanks.
See you soon.
Yeah, guys. Thank you. See you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.